Dad was a golfer, used to go along with him to golf and caddy, but at the end he would always go into the clubhouse for one beer. And then I'd go home and Saturday afternoon listen to the game, watch the game on the telly on the ABC at 6 o'clock. Didn't take long and I was an obsessive South fan. 1969, bad year to start following South, but a lifelong obsession.
And there's a little area where the players sit. We'll be heading over there in a little while to talk to a few of the players about the move.
At the end of the 90s, with South kicked out of the comp, that was a huge event in life. That was when I went from becoming an obsessive fan to someone who wanted to actually fight for the club and get involved in that fight back, and did everything that I could during that time. To be brutally honest, I didn't think we would get back into the comp. I just thought, how can we possibly fight against the might of News Limited? And one night, I was ranting to my poor, long-suffering wife. I was just ranting, this is an absolute joke. In 30 years, no one's going to understand what it was like. No one's going to know what this felt like, to lose this thing which has been your life, for all your life. And people are going to think South just went broke when they didn't. It's not what happened. I said, somebody ought to write a bloody book and, just record what actually happened. And my wife said, well, why don't you just shut up and why don't you do it? I said, I might just do that. And I toddled out to the back room and I turned on the computer and I started to write, and I wrote a book about being a South fan. And that's how that whole thing started, about writing.
We could have a board challenge with all those blood and guts every year, and who wants to come and play at a club like that? There's no more shit fight. Russell and Peter run this club.
So just after the privatisation vote, not long afterwards, Russell Crowe sent me an email and contacted me, and from there came the Book of Feuds, which was another big project with a completely different beast, obviously, because it was a history book more than a history of me being a South fan. This was about the history of the club. So Russell used that during the 2007 season to, I suppose, educate the players in the history of the club. Because we had a bunch of players who were young and South hadn't been any good since probably 1989 was the last year we'd had a really, really good side. And most of the players had no idea. Russell said to me that he had spoken to the playing group and asked them who won the most premierships, and nobody knew that it was South. I'd get an email on Monday and it would say BOF, which was Book of Feuds, Urco, Wednesday 11:30, see you there, RC.
For me, it's bloody exciting because I get to go along and stand in the corner of the dressing room and hear the players get read my stuff. It's really exciting. And I get to, work with Russell Crowe. I'm starstruck. It's great.
So listen to your coach, focus your thoughts. It's time to spoil the party. Book of Feuds is closed.
Something, that I managed to be involved in and contribute to some part of the club and the game, and it's good. Love it. Yeah.
I'm already out of the car. Get back into it then.
I met Greg when I was 16. I met him at Redfern when South played Cronulla, and I was absolutely incensed about the fact that we gave away a penalty and lost the game in it. Greg and his then girlfriend, who later became his wife, was sitting next to us, and he just said to my mum, you better watch him, he's going to blow a gasket one day if you don't calm down. And then the next week was at Cogra Oval, and South lost again, and as they did most games that year. And walking out of the ground afterwards, I realised that this guy was walking out next to me. I said, how are you going? I didn't know his name. He didn't know my name. And we were talking about the game. And I said, are you going next week? And he said, yeah, I go every week, mate. I said, so do I. Where do you sit? He said, on the hill. I said, I'll see you there. I think it was probably about another 4 weeks before we even knew each other's names, but we just started to sit together. And we sat together every week for 30 years. And we had one thing in common, which was that we both were obsessed with the Rabbitohs. We made a pact that we would always go to watch South, forever. We were together when the call came to kick them out. We were together when we lost the first court case, and we were together when we got back in, and we went through those years of rebuilding and gradually getting to be a good side again. When Michael Maguire became the coach in 2012, I can remember thinking, this is we've now got this group of players, and now we've got a hard as nails coach to take them forward. The start of 2013, Greg got sick, sent me a message and said, have you got 10 minutes? I need to talk to you. I rang him and he said, oh mate, the doctor reckons I've got lung cancer. Stage 4, that can't be good. I remember we talked for a bit and I just was numb. I went home and I remember doing your bloody medical research on Google and reading all about it, and I thought, oh hell, it's terminal. 2013 was the year. Again, it's a year of what happened in that year. And we watched quite a number of games at his house because he wasn't well enough to go to the game. And then we went to the first game in the finals where they beat Melbourne convincingly. In the third week they were playing Manly. And Greg said to me, I don't think I'll go. And I said, what do you mean? Because I was just obsessed with, we're going to see the grand final and we're going to see the premiership. We've been talking about it for 36 years and we're going to do it. I think it was during that week leading up to the preliminary final where I just thought, well, what's it all for anyway? Greg's going to die, and he's dying. And he was very sick by then anyway. Spoke to my wife and I said, what am I going to do? We're going to buy a ticket. I'm going to buy him a ticket. I've got to. And she said, why don't you get in touch with Russell Crowe and see if you can go into a box? And I said, I can't do that. And she said, bloody oath you can, You've been doing all of this stuff with him, send him a message. So I sent him a text and he wrote, and he straight back said, 100% you can come and sit in my box. As we went to pick him up and we parked in the special parks and we wheeled him across in the wheelchair, and I still hadn't worked out what we were going to do for the grand final. The Souths were in front 14-0 after 10 minutes and lost the damn game, 24-14 with 5 minutes to go, and I can see it happening. Renault got the ball and kicked it straight into the Manly guy, Tom Simons, who caught it, ran over and scored. And I just thought, well, that's it. 36 years of watching footy together and I've got 4 minutes and 31 seconds of it left. You don't get a countdown like that to the end of something like of life like that, because I knew that he was going to die quite soon. And that last 4 minutes was quite surreal, really. I couldn't look at him and I couldn't speak. I just sat there and watched it happen, watched the clock go down to naught, the siren thing, and the season was over, and I didn't care about that anymore. I didn't care about anything anymore except that was the last time we would get to watch footy together. And honestly, I just sat there gritting my teeth, and he just patted me on the knee and he just said, mate, it wasn't meant to be, don't worry about it. He died a month later, and I didn't even want to go to the footy anymore. But I can remember talking to him in the hospital about the middle of 2013, and I'd said to him at one point, I don't know whether I'm going to go to the footy anymore. He looked at me, he said, that is the stupidest thing you've ever said, and you've said many, many stupid things to me in your life. And he then said, if you were dying, would you want me to stop going to the football? And that made absolute perfect sense to me. I thought, well, no, of course not. And he said to me, mate, you've got to keep going. And this team's going to win the premiership. If not this year, then next year. And if not next year, the year after. And when that happens, you've got to get double the enjoyment, because you've got to live it for me, because I won't be there, but I will be there. It was the happiest and saddest day of my whole life put into one day because my family was there, which is obviously incredibly important. I'd been waiting for it for 43 years, and Greg and I had been waiting for it for 37 years, and he wasn't able to be there on the day, so it was pretty tough, but it was pretty, I don't know, it's just, I don't really know how to describe it. If I could have one day, to just sit with him and watch the replay and talk about it, that would be the thing I would have. But you don't get to have that. So it's an emotional story, and he's one of the more important people in my life, and I'll never forget him. And I've still got a T-shirt that says, with a picture of the two of us which says we were there when the drought broke, which I wore on that day, which I still wear to the footy, not every week now, but occasionally, because it's wearing a bit thin, 10 years old, but you know, I'll never forget him. And this is his watch actually. His wife asked me, he asked his wife to give me his watch, so I wear that to the footy, and it's a big part of life. It was desperately, desperately sad for quite a long time, and then it started to be less that and more, I'm glad I had all of those times, and that's what it is more now. You know, there are moments that happen all the time where the only person I could talk about it with was Greg, so I think about him lots. Intellectually, I look at it and think, what am I doing here? My wife doesn't quite get it. You tie your emotions to a bunch of people who are now a third my age. I used to say half my age, now they're a third my age, running around belting each other. And if they lose, I'm upset for at least a day. But that's me. It's just who I am. Yeah.